The India-Pakistan border is experiencing the most consequential and irreversible strategic transformation in the subcontinent's modern history. India has executed a comprehensive, multi-layered restructuring of its relationship with Pakistan that goes far beyond a simple military exchange. The trigger was the Pahalgam Valley massacre of April 2025, when gunmen systematically killed 25 Indian citizens and one Nepali national in Indian-administered Kashmir, targeting victims on the basis of their Hindu faith at close range. The Resistance Front, a designated proxy of the Pakistan-based terror organization Lashkar-e-Taiba, initially claimed the operation. India's response was not a measured diplomatic protest. It was a calculated dismantling of every institutional framework that had governed the bilateral relationship since 1960. Within days, New Delhi suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, shuttered the Attari-Wagah border crossing, expelled Pakistani military advisors, canceled visas for Pakistani nationals. These weren't reactive punishments. They were surgical strikes on the very architecture of coexistence, each one targeting a pillar that Pakistan had long assumed was structurally untouchable. Pakistan's reciprocal measures followed swiftly, but the symmetry is deeply misleading. Islamabad suspended the Simla Agreement, closed its airspace to Indian aircraft, severed trade, and expelled Indian diplomats. On paper, this looks like a balanced exchange of punitive measures between two equal parties. It is not. Pakistan's actions were largely symbolic disruptions of an already minimal economic relationship. India's actions, by contrast, targeted existential Pakistani vulnerabilities. The Indus Waters Treaty suspension, in particular, represents a category of pressure with no Pakistani equivalent. Islamabad depends on the Indus, Jhelum, Chenab rivers flowing downstream from Indian-controlled territory for the irrigation of its entire agricultural heartland. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif acknowledged the stakes bluntly, stating that any weaponization of water would justify military action. That a senior minister was forced to publicly define the threshold for war over river flows illustrates precisely how asymmetric India's leverage had become in the weeks following Pahalgam. Operation Sindoor, launched on May 6, 2025, converted this diplomatic pressure into direct kinetic reality. Indian forces struck 9 sites across Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Jammu and Kashmir, targeting infrastructure that New Delhi alleged had served as planning and staging facilities for terrorist operations. The operation marked the deepest and most coordinated conventional military intrusion into Pakistani territory since the 1971 war, crossing red lines that both sides had previously treated as inviolable. Drones, precision missiles, and artillery engaged military installations and urban-adjacent infrastructure simultaneously, demonstrating a combined arms architecture that Pakistan's defense establishment had not anticipated facing at this scale. The 4 days of fighting that followed produced over 70 casualties. This the most intense direct military confrontation between the two nuclear-armed states since the 1999 Kargil conflict. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance initially dismissed it as none of America's business. Within 24 hours, alarming intelligence of undisclosed content reversed Washington's posture entirely. Secretary of State Marco Rubio worked alongside Vance to broker a ceasefire by May 10th. The speed of that American reversal itself indicates how close the situation came to crossing a threshold that neither Washington nor Beijing could afford to ignore. But how does a 4-day military exchange permanently alter a border that has been contested since 1947? The answer lies not in the combat itself, but in the physical infrastructure India has been systematically installing along the frontier. In the legal and diplomatic frameworks, it has simultaneously dismantled. Since February 2025, India's Central Public Works Department has been constructing a 1.450-kilometer border road, spanning 354 kilometers through Indian Punjab and 1,096 kilometers through Rajasthan. This is not a symbolic gesture. A border road of this scale enables rapid mechanized reinforcement, dramatically compresses response times for anti-infiltration operations. Critically, functions as a structural anti-tunnel mechanism by disrupting the subsurface topography that cross-border smuggling networks have exploited for decades. India had already fenced 2,064 of the 3,323 total kilometers of its Pakistan border by 2024. The road project transforms that fenced barrier from a static line into a dynamic operational network. Furthermore, Home Minister Amit Shah's directive to demolish all structures within 15 kilometers of the border represents a territorial buffer strategy of a fundamentally different character than anything India has previously attempted. Buildings within that 15-kilometer corridor, deemed illegal under the new security architecture, are being cleared. The stated rationale covers infiltration, narcotics trafficking, and smuggling. The operational logic goes considerably deeper. A cleared 15-kilometer belt eliminates the concealment infrastructure that cross-border networks depend on for their first and last legs of movement. It creates a surveillance-friendly zone where India's rapidly expanding drone monitoring network, the same technology that detected 266 drone-based smuggling incidents in a single year, can operate without obstruction. The border is not merely being guarded. It is being structurally redesigned to make the Pakistani operational model permanently unworkable. Can Pakistan reverse this trajectory? The honest military and economic analysis suggests it cannot. The internal conditions Pakistan is currently navigating make the prospect even more remote. Islamabad is managing what analysts are describing as a polycrisis of simultaneous and mutually reinforcing failures. Inflation and unemployment have driven the government to repeated IMF emergency interventions and dependency on financial lifelines from Saudi Arabia and China. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is conducting an accelerating campaign of attacks along Pakistan's northwestern border, stretching military and paramilitary resources that are simultaneously required on the eastern front facing India. The civil-military fracture that has characterized Pakistani politics since the removal of Imran Khan has deepened to the point where strategic coherence at the national level is genuinely in question. This is the precise context in which India chose to execute its most assertive border restructuring in a generation. The timing was not accidental. The Indus Waters Treaty suspension deserves its own strategic analysis because its long-term implications dwarf even the military exchange in their potential consequences. The treaty, negotiated with World Bank mediation and signed in 1960, survived 3 full-scale wars, the 1971 dismemberment of Pakistan, decades of proxy conflict. Its durability was considered one of the few genuinely stable elements in the bilateral relationship. India's decision to suspend it, to simultaneously refuse the jurisdiction of the Hague-based Court of Arbitration over disputes concerning hydroelectric projects on the Chenab and Jhelum rivers, represents a deliberate demolition of the international legal framework that constrained Indian infrastructure development on these rivers. India currently has significant ongoing and planned dam and hydroelectric projects on rivers that feed directly into Pakistan's agricultural system. The legal architecture that limited what India could build no longer applies. Pakistan is left with declarations of outrage and a threatening posture it has no practical means of executing against a conventionally and economically superior adversary. The water dimension carries a mathematical logic that is devastating for Pakistan's agricultural future. Pakistani agriculture accounts for roughly 1/5 of the national economy and employs close to half the workforce. The Indus Basin irrigation system, the largest contiguous irrigation network on the planet, is the physical foundation of that entire productive capacity. Pakistan receives its treaty-allocated water flows from rivers whose headwaters and upper courses lie entirely within Indian-controlled territory. If India were to fully abrogate the treaty and develop infrastructure that materially reduces downstream flows, the agricultural consequences for Pakistan would be catastrophic in a way that no amount of military posturing could offset. Pakistan's defense minister said that such a move would constitute an act of war. India knows this. The suspension is therefore a permanent strategic lever, a loaded weapon that India does not need to fire to extract maximum effect from simply holding. India's broader geopolitical repositioning compounds Pakistan's isolation at precisely the moment when it can least afford to be isolated. New Delhi has systematically dehyphenated Pakistan from the central calculus of its foreign policy, redirecting strategic attention toward the Quad, the I2U2 framework, BIMSTEC, as a functional replacement for the effectively defunct SARC. This is more than a diplomatic pivot. It is a declaration that Pakistan no longer occupies a structurally essential role in India's regional architecture. The practical consequence is that Pakistan cannot leverage its relationships within South Asian multilateral frameworks to counterbalance Indian pressure. This was because India has simply built new frameworks that exclude it. Pakistan's most consequential external relationships now run through Beijing and intermittently through Washington's counterterrorism interests. China's position is instructive. Beijing called for de-escalation and an independent investigation after Operation Sindoor, framing itself as a moderating voice, while simultaneously maintaining the economic and military partnerships with Pakistan that enable the very capabilities India objects to. This is not moderation. It is strategic ambiguity that benefits China, regardless of which direction the India-Pakistan relationship develops. What does the physical border look like in the immediate operational environment? Along the line of control in Kashmir and the international border through Punjab and Rajasthan, exchanges of fire have continued with a regularity that indicates neither side has fully accepted the ceasefire as a strategic endpoint. The border ceremony at Attari Wagah, for decades a daily theatrical affirmation of adversarial coexistence, was stripped of its symbolic handshake in the aftermath of the April crisis. The ceremonial reduction is minor in itself. Its significance lies in what it reflects about the broader framework collapse. Trade, which was already minimal following Pakistan's 2019 suspension of commerce after India revoked Kashmir's special status, has been completely severed. The Attari Wagah crossing, which once processed commercial and civilian movement in both directions, now stands as a physical monument to a bilateral relationship that has been functionally dismantled at every institutional level. American think tanks assessing the medium-term trajectory of the region are warning of elevated conflict risk through 2026 and beyond. The logic behind this assessment is straightforward. Each military exchange normalizes a higher operational ceiling for the next one. Both sides demonstrated in May 2025 that they are willing to strike targets of a sensitivity and in locations that would have been considered unthinkable a decade ago. The institutional guardrails, the treaty frameworks, the diplomatic channels, the symbolic border rituals, the multilateral dispute mechanisms have been progressively stripped away. What remains is a heavily militarized frontier, backed by two nuclear arsenals, with one side in the grip of a cascading economic and political crisis, and the other systematically advancing its strategic position across every available domain. The ceasefire of May 10th stopped the shooting. It did not reverse any of the structural changes India made to the bilateral relationship. Pakistan has no mechanism to compel their reversal. The border road will be completed. The 15-kilometer demolition corridor will be cleared. The Indus Waters Treaty remains suspended, and India continues to refuse international arbitration over its hydroelectric development. Pakistan's water security, its agricultural economy, its territorial buffer zones are simultaneously under pressure from an adversary that has, for the first time in the modern history of the relationship, chosen to apply maximum leverage across every available domain at the same moment. Whether Pakistan's government, fractured between a military establishment and a political class in open conflict with each other, can construct a coherent response to this multi-dimensional pressure while managing a TTP insurgency on one border and facing a reconstructed Indian security architecture on the other, is the central strategic question of the subcontinent's immediate future.